my people, so that's just a small taste of exactly what's going on in our oceans at this time. It currently has the scientific community and the public alike baffled. Nobody understands why these creatures are pushing towards the shoreline. Now, granted, as you saw, the pilot whale video said it happened a couple years prior, but not all different creatures in mass. Before I begin, this is all for entertainment purposes only and all speculation, not based on any absolute fact. So what do y'all think it could possibly be? Make sure you comment your opinions below after this video. Now, according to one source, a similar occurrence took place back in 2003 that wasn't publicly aired. Many different species of marine life were washing ashore dead, seemingly out of nowhere. Others were beaching themselves, and this would result in their death. Well, it turns out the military, the Navy to be exact, was experimenting with weaponizing sonar in the area at the time. Frequencies and the sounds they were using were so loud that they actually killed a lot of the wildlife and drove others to attempt to reach shore. It's even alleged that some civilians stumbled upon mermaids washed ashore dead. The sad thing is the Navy, even before testing, documented that they estimated 170,000 marine animals, 500 different species, would suffer from these tests. Sonar systems first developed by the U.S. Navy to detect enemy submarines used rolling sound waves of nearly 235 decibels. The loudest rock bands today reach only 130 decibels, and these sound waves can travel up to 300 miles in the ocean. This made people angry to say the least. So an environmental group sued the Navy and was successful in the lower courts, but unfortunately, when it reached the Supreme Court, they allowed for mild testing. So of course, this could be one of the culprits. But I have noticed that none of the marine animals are actually washing ashore already dead. Also, marine life that is subject to these type of sonar sounds, like whales, often have bleeding eyes or bleeding orifices. Sometimes even their internals are affected. But according to reports, there hasn't been any sign of this. So I'm not going to rule this out or anything, but as a result, I'm going to have to say I do not believe that the military is the cause of this. If not the military, what could it possibly be? Tsunamis? Well, none have been reported. Hurricanes? Just the one in Florida. That leads me to the more cringe explanation. So buckle up and get ready. So it's crazy that I had come across all of this content, mostly, honestly, from Phoebe on TikTok. Check her out. But she had been posting videos about odd tendencies in the marine life as of late, as you saw in the previous video. But prior to that, I had been pondering a theory, I guess you could say, that may or may not be totally cringe, outlandish, all of the above, but maybe, just maybe, there's something to it. Now, before I say this or anything like that, I'm not trying to fearmonger. I'm not trying to scare anybody. I'm not trying to say that what I'm going to say is at all valid for entertainment purposes only. Like, it's so out there and just wild, but yet intriguing. I just have to share it. So like I said, I had been pondering this theory, but it wasn't until me and one of my boys were talking crazy shit that when I actually spoke it into words, it kind of blew my mind. So basically, the theory I proposed is this. So we had the flood, right? Who's to say there hasn't been multiple floods throughout history, right? Throughout the history of mankind. You got the mud flood, then you got the great flood. So one day I got to thinking, what if, who's to say there hasn't been multiple floods throughout history, right? Throughout the history of mankind. You got the mud flood, then you got the great flood. So one day I got to thinking, what if, by chance, that these floods, or these resets, if you will, tend to happen in consistent intervals. So let me explain. Using the book of Genesis to estimate right around when the flood took place, you look at the year Adam and Eve were allegedly created, which was around 4004 BC, using genealogy to estimate that year. And around 1,000 years later, Noah was born. So that puts you at 3000 BC, and the flood took place in his 600th year. So you're at the year 3000 before Christ, add 600 years, That puts you around 2400 BC, give or take. This would mean that the flood took place roughly 4,000 years ago. Now hold on. But that's obviously up for much interpretation. According to scientists, it was even earlier than that. For example, two marine biologists believe that after the last ice age, the Black Sea had partially dried up. At that time, it was separated from the Mediterranean Sea by the Bosporus Strait. The shore of the Black Sea was fertile and had been used by people to start farmland. They believe that when the northern hemisphere ice sheets actually started melting, it gave rise to the freshwater lake of the Black Sea. According to studies, the Mediterranean broke the Bosporus Strait about 7,600 years ago. With the force of 200 times the Niagara Falls, the Mediterranean Sea rushed in, engulfing everything, up to 60,000 square miles of land. They believe that this was passed down for 3,000 years in story, and that is the story of the Great Flood. Well, about 7,600 years ago puts us at roughly around 5 to 6,000 BC. Now, the question is, do these two events necessarily have to be the Great Flood? I say no. They could have been two separate Great Floods. The funny thing is, there are scientists that also believe the Great Flood occurred 12,000 years ago. That would have been roughly around the same time as some believe the Atlanteans and Lemurians roamed the earth. But again, around 4,000 years later. You're starting to see the trend here? It seems that throughout history it's believed, and this is based on sediment samples, some radiocarbon dating, etc. So, possibly hard tangible evidence that floods have occurred every 4,000 or so years on this planet. So back to my theory. If this is the case, if it is so that this planet goes through some sort of shift or some subterranean pockets open up every 4,000 years, if this is the case, then this basically means that for 4,000 year intervals, the world's human population is able to build and thrive, reaching numbers oftentimes possibly in the billions, but for sure the 100 millions, right? Now what I'm about to say next is somewhat graphic, possibly, and it is not for the faint of heart, so if you're not feeling it, you might want to take leave. What if there's a creature, whether it becomes from, and what if this creature comes from the waters below, or the deepest deep blue waters that man hasn't even fathomed or even understands or knows about? The caverns of alleged fresh waters below that the massive trees or the elder trees of earth in the Bible were said to have tapped their roots into. I'm talking a sea creature so massive and so incomprehensible to you and I that we can't even imagine what this creature is, let alone how big it is. What if this absolute Leviathan-like creature has picked up on this world flood type trend, alleging that it's the case, of course, in a hypothetical scenario where a flood does take place every 4,000 years? What if this creature has made a pattern of surfacing when this is about to take place? Oh yeah, you know where I'm going with this. What if that creature surfaces to feed after the Great Flood? Not only feed, but breed as well. Every so many thousand years. This creature could be thousands of years old, or continue having descendants that live so many thousand years. Who knows? But could it be possible? And I'm not saying this is the case. I'm not saying the flood's coming. I'm not saying any of that. But what if? And of course, when I throw this out there, me and my boy are freaking out like, no way, whoa, like having fun with it. This is what this is. This is fun, y'all. It's not to be taken literally. Don't lose any sleep at night. I'm not saying the flood's coming or any of that. I'm not even saying those marine animals are running away from said creature. It just made me kind of think about something like that scenario, just with all the apocalyptic jargon and talk going on right now out in the world. Is it possible? Can you feel me? Like, I love pondering this type of stuff. It's what I do. I speak hypotheticals. I speak about outlandish, wild, crazy ideas. But then there was more. Then I started looking into it a little bit and actually stumbled upon something very intriguing. Not only in the Bible, but the book of Enoch. But unfortunately, that's all I have time for today. We're going to have to continue this the next go round.